Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new day broadcast where we spark conversations that inspire, change, and help us see the world in new ways. At a new day, we dig deep into how politics, culture, and tradition shape our lives, talking with leaders working to create a better future for all of us. This show is all about essential discussions on social justice, especially gender justice, to influence policies and make fundamental changes in society. My name is Priscilla Jenemambela, and I'm delighted to have you here. Let's work together to rethink how we see the world, grow our understanding, and move towards a society where fairness and justice are at the heart of everything we do. Thank you for joining us on this journey toward a new day. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our guest. This is her second time around. Her name is Mildred Winner. For
Mhm.
those who weren't here the last time, Mildred is a diviner. She was featured on BBC. She's a philosopher. She's an astrologer. She's doing amazing things in our world today. So it's really an honor to have this knowledgeable, wise goddess of our time. Thank you for
Wow.
joining us today again, Mildred.
Thank you for having me.
Of course,
Great.
of course. Thank you for agreeing to come for the second time.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, how is Kenya? I wanted to say this morning, but then what time is it
Mhm.
at your end again?
It's 8:05 p.m. on
Oh
my
my
side.
God. And you're in Nairobi.
Yes, Nairobi.
8 p.m.
8 p.m. And
And
it's very cold here. It's very cold. So it's just that because of the lighting, I tend to get hot. But otherwise, I would be covered up like an Eskimo, proper.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. On my end here is 10 something. It's just
8.
10:06. Yeah. So it's in the morning.
Ah,
And yeah, yeah, in Phoenix.
good.
Wow.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We have the whole day covered.
Yeah. So what's
Yeah.
going on? What's going on right now in Nairobi?
Oh,
How's
there's a lot. There's a
yeah,
lot happening here.
the political
I'm
climate?
sure, yes, the political sequels are continuing. So now we have a bit of a labor issue or a labor situation going on, a lot of strike notices being issued.
Oh,
And I think people are just now waking up to the fact that we know our worth. You people need to pay us our worth. What are you people doing with our taxes? So just a lot of accountability in the air going on this end.
that's good. That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm glad. I wish that over here
Mhm.
Americans will wake up from the Kool-Aid of
Mhm.
nationalism about we are the greatest country in the world, and yeah, and demand for
Yeah.
more than material comfort. There's
Mm.
yeah, I think there's a lot to demand over here. Um,
Mm.
Wellness, for instance, you can just be complacent with material comfort, and then your
Mm.
humanity as a whole is not really well, like your psyche, you being overworked. I mean, you got to work like
Yeah.
three jobs before you can even meet
Mm.
basic needs like paying rent or paying mortgage,
Mm.
or yeah, because you're being underpaid. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
same thing I think is driving what's happening in Kenya. Gen Zs are
Mm.
more awake this generation.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
hopefully,
They're under awakening the rest of us, and it's just like it's such an effect around the world, and you can see that. You can see what happened in Bangladesh as well with their Gen Z. So they are really leading the charge in
yeah,
these transformations. Yeah.
that's good. That's good. I'm
Mhm.
glad. Over here, the women are becoming more involved, especially these elections, talking about
Yeah.
mm, you mess with our reproductive right. So women are not so much. Hopefully they go through and vote. So
Indeed. Yeah,
yes,
there's just something different in the air. And again, what's
new
going
day
on
is
with
really yeah,
women,
yeah,
yeah, and what's going on with women really would play into what's happening in terms of the genders. So very interesting to observe what's going on there too.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, awakening is happening. I am so glad to be alive at this time in
Yeah,
our
it's
time. Yeah.
exciting. It's
Yep.
exciting.
Yeah, for such awakening to be happening. Like,
Yeah.
come on, go out those days where we just sat down and left it to people to decide. I mean, we're paying
Mm-hmm.
taxes. Where are they going? Especially when it comes to the US. You
Mm-hmm.
talking about economists talking about in 2022 alone more than how 11 or something trillion or taxes will
Mm-hmm.
be out of five or something. And bulk of that is going to where instead of you know, investing in social services here, it's just going
Mm-hmm.
into defense because they want to be interfering into other people politics and
Wow.
America wants to be continue to be seen as this giant nation and just sponsoring fighting. If it's not in
Mm.
Ukraine, then it's somewhere in Gaza. So
Yeah.
all those things are forming part of the political discourse mainstream now. People are awakening.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so glad about that.
Indeed. 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 Political awakening.
And I think you predated, not I think, but you did. Yes, you did predate about most of those things. So we have it here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have it here. I learned that was it you said is it 2027 also there will be a lot of independent people
Mm,
not aligned with parties, but as
right.
independent thinkers rising up
Yeah.
to get involved in politics to shape policies, so that
Mm-hmm.
people lives will change, so that it will have global impact. So you
Right.
predicted some of those things years ago, and the
Mm.
awakening is happening.
Indeed, indeed, and it tells you just how cyclical these things are, and that if we honor these tools that were handed over to us by the ancients, then they too will honor us in return, because you can see just how these things are happening to the letter almost. So it's very fascinating, and it also emboldens those of us who practice some of these systems to continue doing it. In fact, we are doing it for the people, isn't it? And we are doing it for the benefit of society, not necessarily to its detriment. So in a way, we become almost like the way showers of where society is going, specifically this decade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so viewers, Mildred is back today. We're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
those things that a few that we mentioned. We're going to be talking about spiritual dimension. We're going to be talking about ourselves. We're going to be talking about, so the central theme of today's conversation will focus on relationships, marriage, and the
Mm-hmm.
intersection of sex and spirituality, but also what's going on in our world. It starts from the spirit and goes
Mm.
into manifests into the physical. So we're going to be talking about the spiritual dimension of our lives, how it feeds into our physical world. So
All
we'll
right.
talk about spiritual dimension of relationships. We'll talk about sexual energy as creative energy. We're going to be also talking about masculinity and femininity in a modern era. We're going to be
Yeah.
talking about the role of nurturing in raising children. We're going to be talking about the concepts of archetypes in relationship, feminism and gender equality, the need for modern rites of passage, among other things. This this conversation, people,
Mm-hmm.
this conversation will be explosive. So
Yeah.
welcome to an open mind challenge on a new day. This is
Yeah.
a call for you to open your mind. It's a challenge. A new
Mm.
day is
My
an open
apologies.
challenge movement. So welcome and
Mm-hmm.
stay with us. Welcome and stay with us.
I'm
Are
trying
you
to sort my lighting. Sorry. My
ready?
lighting. I'm trying to sort it. 1 minute, but I should be fine. I can still continue while I sort my lighting out.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Ooh, that's
So
crazy.
when you're ready, you can just start by telling us first.
Uh-huh.
Spiritual, how can we, so how to explore how humans are multifaceted. Let's talk about,
Right.
um, because I already announced to
Right.
viewers, yeah. So
Indeed.
provide us an overview of what astrology is and its evolution over time. I know those are things that you talked about the last time you were here, but we
Mm-hmm.
talked so much, so we were just caught, it was just bits and pieces here and there. But today, I want
Mm,
to go a little in depth so
right.
that, yeah, so that people can really understand. So provide us an overview of what astrology is and its evolution over time.
Right. And like I told you before, Priscilla, it seems like you tend to preempt what I want to talk about even before I indicate that I'm going to talk about this, because astrology is going to be such a wonderful framework through which we can discuss the concept of relationships, the concept of connection to
Mm.
other individuals in terms of relationship, marriage, sexuality. But to
I
your
know. I
question,
was saying. You remember? I was like, I was just the whole week. I was like, what can I ask her? I even
yeah.
message you. I said, what? I Yeah. There's so much. I don't even know where to start from. Can you send me some talking points? But then
Mm-hmm.
before yesterday, I was doing my own meditation in the past few days, just asking the universe and the
Mm-hmm.
ancestors. Say, I really need to tap into the knowledge that your channel through me.
Yeah.
What can we talk about? And then as I was doing my questions, they just started coming to me. Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
glad that we in sync. That was what you wanted to talk about, because you didn't even send me and the talking points that I wanted.
Yeah.
I was just like,
Indeed.
what can I talk about? And I was just reading my ancestor cards. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that, yeah, this is
Yeah.
what I came across.
Yeah, we were quite aligned in terms of that. So in terms of astrology, I read birth charts as well as part of my work. And what that entails sometimes, as I tell my client, is introducing somebody to themselves very deeply. Because what tends to happen is we tend to hold on to what we think we are, who we think we are, or certain traits that are quote unquote more acceptable in society. And then we push aside those we think or deem to be unacceptable or dark traits within ourselves.
You're
Basically,
talking about astrology.
sorry?
You're talking about astrology.
Yes, yes, astrology. So astrology becomes a tool through which you can really go into deep self-knowledge
Okay.
without judgment of yourself. And what you realize when you look at astrology is it's a map. I call it a map of the psyche,
Yeah.
right? It's usually in terms of it's expressed in terms of a circle. And the circle is such an important shape, an important design from the ancient esoterists to the modern esoterists. And there's a reason why the circle is deemed to be perfect. And that is simply that the circle is what contains the world parents, the masculine and the feminine. The circle is what contains the opposites or the dualities. I know within the circle we have the 12 zodiac signs, but
Mm.
again, within those 12, there are six polarities, isn't it? So each sign has its opposite and opposing quality. So it's always good to, when you're entering that study or exploration of yourself, to look at yourself in terms of the circle or the duality. So to what extent are you reconciled with your oppositions? To what extent are you reconciled with your conjunctions, your squares? Those are the aspects. Another way of looking at astrology is it is a map of or an image of the soul's aspirations for that lifetime. And I say that because through the birth chart, you're able to see what quote unquote settings this soul has come into this life with. What are they most naturally predisposed to? What inner resources do they have, and how do they make then use of those inner resources to achieve what they want to achieve all along? And I usually say it is better to not swim upstream. You'd rather work with what you have than try to go where you don't have the inner resources to survive, or go where you have to dig so much deeper than the next person to achieve regular outcomes. And we've seen this even at work, where we have imposter syndrome. There are people who will go into an area of work or an area of study where they're so natural, right? Everything comes very naturally, it flows. But for the next person, not so much. They have to constantly psych themselves up every morning to go to work. They have to psych themselves up to do things that for the next person are very basic, right? So through the study of astrology, you're able to see yourself in terms of your dualities. And one thing that people don't realize is there's those three: the physical, emotional, and the spiritual. But then there's also the masculine and the feminine. And I usually say this because every man has an inner woman, and every woman has an inner man. And you see this reflected even in your chart, because everybody has Venus, Mars, right? That's a masculine feminine dyad. Everyone has Sun, Moon. That's another masculine feminine dyad. Everyone has Uranus and Neptune. That's another masculine feminine dyad. So to what extent are these dyads or these dualities expressing themselves without sabotaging each other? Now, what tends to happen also is, remember how we talked about the continuity of the soul in terms of African spiritual concepts?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it means that we are not just existing in terms of the physical. The physical, if anything, is the very last manifestation. If you look at the chain of events, the word always exists before the thing, isn't it? The concept of a thing exists before the thing itself, which is why when you're a creator or a designer looks at things at highly and very highly conceptual levels. So when we talk about, for instance, in astrology, when we talk about the sun or we talk about the moon as concepts, or Venus, you hear us, throwing out planetary terms. I want it to be very clear that we are not talking about the literal sun or the literal moon. We are talking about the concept of the sun, the esoteric concept, because even the sun itself is subject to a higher sun, is subject to a spiritual sun. So is the moon, so is Venus. And these concepts of the sun, moon, Venus are not only to be experienced as planets, they are also experienced within us through those dyads. The ancients were also very wise enough to see the planetary bodies expressed through the metals, through our own body organs and systems. So that's why whatever it is that is happening up there is in some ways reflected in the very micro. So the macrocosm influences the microcosm. So it's very important to understand that the soul exists across all timelines. And the other thing that the astrology shows us or proves to us, and one of the things I also try to make as thesis statements, is time is not linear. It is circular, isn't it? That's why it is a circle, not necessarily point A to point Z.
Spirituality concept.
Exactly. It is circular. Others would say spiral, but you see, that's still a circular motion, isn't it? So when you look at it from that perspective, then you realize we must go through various fields of experience in more or less similar degrees until we move on to the next experience, which is why that circle is divided into 12. And those 12 houses, fine, in astrology, there's a lot of jargon. We talk about houses, the first house, the second house. But what we are referring to is spheres of experience, because life isn't just one thing. Sorry, my light is going on and off, but I think you can still see me. So there's so many spheres of experience. So when we talk about, the sun is in the 12th house, what does that even mean? What we are saying is the sun is in your life, the 12th sphere of experience is now under emphasis, because the sun tends to emphasize. And the 12th sphere is a very spiritual sphere. It is an ancestral sphere. It is the one that activates our psychic senses. People who have a very active planet in the 12th house tend to pick up on trends before they happen. Like, I have a few planets in the 12th house myself, but of course I have a planet in other houses, isn't it? So I'm not just somebody who can tap into the spiritual sphere. I can also operate in the material realm in one way or another. So it's always important to understand yourself as a totality, not just where is my strength and then emphasize on that. Because when you do that, you start creating shadows. The traits that you malign or that you denigrate will turn and start acting against your interest. Then that's where people come to us as astrologers, and they tell us, oh my goodness, things are not going well in my life. Everything I start or every relationship I start tends to get scattered on site. What's going on? So I usually start at the beginning with such people. I look at their chart, and from there you're able to pick up one or two things.
All right.
Another,
You
yeah.
say, so what I hear you saying is that
Mm-hmm.
humans are multifaceted,
Yeah.
encompassing physical, emotional, and
Mm-hmm.
spiritual dimension.
Right.
And you said something that reminded me of something in Christianity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'll be making reference to Christianity every now and then because that's the framework that I was raised in, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So when you said we don't begin from the physical, in
Mm.
Christianity, we say something from the Bible where, and God said, "Before I formed you," from that's the Christian perspective.
Right.
Before
Right.
I formed you, I put you in your mother's womb. I knew you.
Mm.
So you existed before you
Yes.
manifested in the physical. And that's
Exactly.
what, yeah, that's what I hear you saying um,
Mm-hmm.
as you break down. Um, even though,
Mm-hmm.
even in, so it resemble Christianity, resemble African spirituality in a,
Absolutely.
but then depart when they say, but then when you die, that's the end. You somewhere laying down until you wait for judgment. But the African
Mm-hmm.
spirituality said, no, death is not the end because
Mm-hmm.
life is linear, like you just said. Uh, uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's circular.
But
Exactly.
can you
Circular.
please tell us the distinction, or is there a distinction between the ancient
Mm-hmm.
and astrology?
Mm-hmm.
Is there this?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
the distinction
Can
in
you?
terms of the concept of life, of the continuity of life, isn't
Oh,
it? And we look at that through the nodes of the moon. I don't know if you've heard about the north node and the south node of the moon. These are the nodes of the moon are where the eclipses tend to happen,
yeah.
right? So we usually talk about eclipses as events that are highly fated, or they bring about highly fated events. We say that the eclipse tends to speed up events or to speed up time, and that's for there's a whole astrological reason for that. Now
Okay.
the thing with the nodes is that the south node, we say, represents things you've come into this life already equipped with, right? So it presupposes a past life. Like you're not just coming into this life as a blank slate. You're coming in as a soul with experience from one place or the other, be that
Mm,
what it may. So you're coming in through the south node, but you're not meant to overly focus so much on the south node because yes, that's a past life, those are past experiences, those are inherent gifts, and then now you look to your north node to check fate, destiny of this particular lifetime.
okay.
So even yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's go to the spiritual connection in relationship. How does the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual aspect of relationships influence their overall health? I want us to
Mm-hmm.
take it, yeah, like that, so that
Mm-hmm.
others can
Right.
follow. Like when we get
Yeah.
the spiritual connection, then I want
Right.
to ask you about channeling sexual energy.
Mm-hmm.
But first, tell us, how does the spiritual aspect of relationship influence their overall health? Just if you have a personal experience you want to throw in your personal
Oh
experience,
my,
fine.
I know,
If you
I
don't want
know,
to,
right?
it's fine. But if you want to just share your personal experience where you felt a strong spiritual connection with a partner,
Yeah,
again, if
right.
you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But just tell us, how does the spiritual
Mm-hmm.
aspect of relationship influence their overall health?
Oh, it's. I think there's my experience, and there's the research that I've done. There's the clients that I've worked with, and then there's just basic the people that you know that you hear about their experiences from. But the thing with, first of all, before I talk even about that connection, we have to understand that relationships are mirrors, and that relationships are also a part of life experience, even esoterically. That's why, even for those of us who read the cards, we have the lovers. The lovers is the sixth key in the hero's journey. So the hero begins as, Johnny come lately. They are the emerging one. They are going on their journey, and they are very hopeful. They're very young, probably, and passionate. But they go through a series of steps, a series of experiences. Remember when I talked about the spheres? Then there's the sphere of relating, the sphere of connection, the sphere of partnership, which is relationships, which is the lovers. So what this means is, remember how I talked about every man has an inner woman and every woman has an inner man. The relationship within the lovers must first start within the self, isn't it?
Yeah.
Before we move on to the outward lover, isn't it? So the state between you and your lover, so to speak, will sort of dictate who you pick as the external lover.
Yeah.
Right? And I usually tell people, a lot of us are out here looking for partners because we are not able to even relate with the inner lover. We are trying to
Yep.
sort of escape that work. I'm lonely. I feel like I need somebody to while away my time with. And then you start digging and you find out, there's a lot of inner work that is
I need
expected
to
from you.
do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you meet with somebody and you connect with them, despite the state of the inner lover, I could be the most spiritual person. But if I have some bit of contention or opposition within me and the inner man, the inner lover, then I'm going to look at men who reflect that. I'm going to go in and deal with men who want to take all the time and they don't want to give. And like I said, the sexual relationship is a give and a take situation because you're exchanging energy in any case. You're relating, isn't it? So he's taking something from me and I'm taking something from him. Now, for those of us who are very empathic, yeah, I know it's a very cliche thing. They say empaths attract narcissists, isn't it? And it's for a reason. It's because a lot of us have a lot to learn when it comes to our boundaries. We give a lot of ourselves without really expecting anything in return. But again, what we don't realize is, yeah, the cup, the account is getting debited and there's nothing coming in. You're going to be out of pocket or out of the money in no time. So the act of sex is in some ways that kind of spiritual or physical exchange, also emotional exchange. Now the question is, what are you exchanging with this person? Because from my perspective, in fact, I got to a point where I had to just be celibate for, I think it was 3 years. In my spiritual journey, and I said no way, because I started getting, I had like skin issues. I started feeling like, wait a minute, what's going on? Skin issues. You start feeling, you're stressed out. You're consistently trying to extract any kind of emotion from this person, but you're not getting it. So in a way, it's a type of vampirism, isn't it? Energy vampirism. So when you're exchanging your energy with somebody who is empty, spiritually, emotionally, then what you're doing is you're giving away something for nothing, right? So you're going to come out of there negative, regardless of how you look at it. And for us who are women, and especially if you're a woman who's highly attuned emotionally, spiritually, you're going to feel that effect immediately or over the span of time. Many of us start dealing with actual issues with somatized diseases, like either pressure, any kind of stress-related disease, gastrointestinal issues, and of course, the obvious one, reproductive problems, pH imbalances. There's just a lot that accompanies the wrong kind of pairing or the wrong kind of conjunction, because relationships fall under conjunction. Conjunction is the coming together of two, masculine and feminine, to form like a third, right? You form a third stronger force. Exactly. So you're meant to be a strong force that has united. But if one side is one way and the other side is another way, what have you created? Right? What is coming in? Exactly, there's an imbalance there. So what we usually say is you have to be very, very mindful of how you are giving away your energy. So we don't give away our energy for free. We don't give away our energy for nothing in exchange. We must be ready to sit it out. You must be ready to meet yourself at the level where you understand where that feeling of emptiness is coming from, because it's coming from somewhere.
Because it coming from
Also, another thing, it's coming from somewhere. It's very emotionally related. Also, another thing is you have to look at how far you have been conditioned, because as women, in a way, we have, our pleasure when it comes to sex is really secondary, isn't it? Like to the man's pleasure, we are just meant to be there, ensure the man has a great time. If you have a great time, wonderful. But
socialization.
again, exactly, the socialization of it
Wrong
all.
socialization, yeah.
Exactly. So on my part, I have found that really setting myself aside from that and being very mindful and very choosy and picky when it comes to who I allow within my space has
Mhm.
made me glow up, so to speak. My skin is clearer. I'm glowing more. I'm not suffering from any type of stress related issue, right? And I'm able to also channel very, very easily. And I'm not saying any kind of activity, sexual activity, will lead to adverse effects. No, because
Okay.
I have, yes, I have met people who really have connected with spiritually very deeply, and those relationships really brought out the best in me.
Each
So
other.
I would definitely, yes, I would definitely ask the audience to be very patient when it comes to choosing your partner. And I also wanted to break it down further. I don't know this under the question of the importance, the spiritual connection in intimate relationships. Now, I wanted to let the audience know that relationships are not the same, right? The same way people are not the same is the same way relationships are not. And I'll demonstrate using the astrological frameworks. Now we have connections that we would call lunar connections, that is moon connections, you have Venus connections, and all of that. Now, when you have a moon connection, it really feels super. It's those connections of those relationships where it feels really super comfortable. You people are at home with each other, you're wearing pajamas, and there's no problem. You're just at your best. It's like almost hanging out with a family member, which I would say is like the dark trait of moon connections. But there are people who are just so easily at home with each other. Another thing about a moon connection is it's a very nurturing relationship. And remember how the moon is the nurturer and the sun is the one that is meant to really lead and give set direction. So when the woman is the moon in such a relationship, I think that's what society has conditioned us to be, the moon. But there are relationships where it's actually the man who is the moon. So it means the man is the nurturer in that relationship. Now, when you find yourself in such a relationship, you need to ask yourself, are you ready and willing to play the role of the moon? I would ask, if it's a man, I ask them that, because society also conditions men not to take a secondary or nurturing role to the woman, isn't it? But when you find those relationships where the man has taken on his role of the moon and the woman as the sun, then they thrive, really. But key is to accept and be ready and willing to play their role. The second one is the Venus connection. The Venus connection really is all things aesthetic, all things pleasurable. This is where love at first sight comes in. The people who you meet and suddenly it's like you knew each other from a different lifetime. Also, the thing with this connection is you share similar interests, isn't it? So it really falls into place very quickly. And I think it's usually said to be the best, one of the best, Venus and the Moon, some of the best connections for marriage. Then we have Mars connection, and this is why I said relationships are not the same, right? The Mars connection now has the element of passion. Mars connection has the element of physical activity. It's very sexually passionate as well, but and on the flip side, it can be very competitive. So, and I've seen a lot of discourse on social media about, your man is competing with you. Why is my boyfriend suddenly trying to upstage me? I'm like, well, maybe it's time to explore what kind of connection, the underlying anger, where is the underlying aggression coming from? Usually, the dark side of that is that you will not see eye to eye. Sometimes it can get physically violent. So those are the downsides of Mars. Then you have Jupiter. Jupiter is really a very pleasant one as well, because it is where, have you ever seen those relationships where these people are just giving to each other? They are so generous, and not just in terms of their emotions. They are generous in terms of their material wealth, finances. I think this is where a lot of women, a lot of us want those types of Jupiterian connections where somebody is naturally and unconditionally giving without really expecting. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't give either, but it is not, the giving is not transactional. So the thing with Jupiter really is about being blessed, right? So this person will give you the best of what they have, which is really a great kind of connection. Now, the opposite one is Saturn connection. And the thing with a Saturn connection is it can appear, you can be in a relationship where I think that your partner is judgmental, they're harsh, they're cold, they're always telling you you should do this or you ought to do that. They're almost like a rule giver and a rule taker. It's like having a relationship with your high school principal, right? Because it's always being reminded where you're falling short or where you could improve. So depending on the state of your own the inner lover, then your inner lover could be a persecutor. And this is certain connections are where we find a lot of abusive situations in, especially the verbal, or the emotional kind. Because somebody might feel like they're constantly in a boot camp, they're constantly feeling criticized. So always be mindful. Again, you can have a relationship that has many of these connections. So it's not just one connection in a relationship. So just the qualities of it will help you identify where is your relationship falling, which kinds of these connections you guys are falling under. Then you have Uranus connections, and Uranus can be very friendly or sometimes overly friendly. The vibe is very free, independent. They will leave you to do your things. They will not be overly, on your case. To some point, it can feel like, does this person even really care about me? And when you're in a Uranus connection, sometimes you can tend to want to extract an emotional response from the person, and they are just not willing to do it because they are just, unconventional by nature. So when you find yourself in a Uranus type of relationship, you have to ask yourself, how secure are you emotionally? How, in terms of your love languages, do you need emotional displays of affection? If you do, Uranus connections might be tough for you, right? So a lot of polyamorous or ethical non-monogamy fall under Uranus connections. Then you have Neptune. Neptune is where we go in with our rose-colored glasses, where now we go in thinking, wow, this is the knight in shining armor, and that's it. So you look at someone based on just your idea or your ideal. You're in love with the idea of being in love with that person. So when you start a relationship and their mask starts falling off, you start seeing their real traits, then you start acting shocked and saying they changed ever since we got married. They changed since I got into a relationship with them. But really, perhaps you weren't seeing them for who they were. You were seeing them through the lens of
Like
Neptune.
you wanted, yeah.
Exactly. Then finally, you have the Pluto connection, and Pluto can be a deeply transformative connection. But I usually, from our research, we say young couples might not be able to withstand Pluto connections. If you have a Pluto connection, probably you date this person when you're young, probably not withstand the pressure. You guys might link up in your 40s or even your 50s later, and suddenly you are at one. You're better able to handle the transformative effect of this person in your life, right? So a lot of Pluto connections also have a lot of power struggles, right? Everywhere somebody is always trying to, get one over the other. There's a lot of deep anger, control, manipulation that comes with an unenlightened Pluto connection. So it's always good to know the baseline. What is the starting point of your relationship? In what ways are you connecting? Because for every connection, as you've seen, there's pros and there are cons, right? So there's always a reason why you feel yourself driven towards the other person, and it's always good to always have your head on straight and look at the person for who they are showing you they are, not necessarily in it.
Who you hoping they will be? Okay, let's
Mm.
just talk about channeling sexual energy. First of all, thank you for that breakdown. I
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't want to talk, talk about
Yeah,
myself.
no, it's
So I
fine.
don't want to say where. Yeah,
we
but I like the
mhm.
breakdown. So thank you.
We don't mind. We
I
don't
hope
mind.
I hope somebody were able to identify themselves. But
Mhm.
but then you also said it can be a combination of multiple uh, uh, of those, like the
Yeah.
Venus, the the
Yes, like Venus,
Uranus.
Moon,
Uh,
Mars. Yeah.
yeah, no, Mars, in fact, no. Yeah, so there can be a multiple of that, the Jupiter, the Venus,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Uranus for some of us. So that was good. Thank you. At
Mm.
least
Are
I
you
saw
welcome?
myself in, yeah, like three of them. So
Good, good.
yeah, so let's go to channeling sexual energy. How can individuals channel sexual energy into creative or productive pursuits? Because I think, yeah. So how do you view the relationship between sexual dreams and
Mm.
unexpressed creative energy?
Absolutely. In fact, I think I've even written about this once on my page,
Yeah, that's yeah,
about, yeah, about the people who have those dreams, the succubus and incubus type of dreams. And
yes,
I
absolutely.
know there's a lot of lore um, based on those particular concepts. But the other thing I usually tell people is when you're having such dreams, be very mindful and cognizant of, first of all, there's probably something you've been wanting to do, something you've been wanting, a project, a venture, something that wants to be birthed from you. And you have all this excess energy. And you see, sexual energy is creative energy, but it's reproductive energy, isn't it? It's strong enough to produce a human. But again, that's not the only channel into which that kind of energy should or ought to be
Mm-hmm.
channeled, right? So sexual energy is really one of those great energies you can use to channel into your spirituality. And that's why, the nuns and the priests, I know, to various degrees of success, they are not required to just required to be celibate. And I usually say that some of these spirits, celibacy attracts actually spirits. If you sit on an abundance of sexual energy, you really tend to attract the kinds of spirits that work with that kind of energy. So energy has to go somewhere, isn't it? If it's not going this way, it's going to be going this way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's one of the reasons why I usually say in my country we have boarding schools both for boys and girls. And I usually say, and from my own experience, that girls schools ought to undergo cleansing, spiritual cleansing, regularly from time to time. If not, you can, you if that language doesn't appeal to you, you can use that as therapy. Maybe they can work with the girls so that they are transmuting that sexual energy in a way that does not harm them. Again, when you're just starting out high school, you're in the depths of your energy, or emerging energy as a woman or as a man for boys, isn't it? And you're really not sure how to handle all that energy. And boarding schools tend to now become breeding grounds for a lot of that energy. So personally, I had a lot of spiritual attacks when I was in high school. I was in a boarding school, and that's where my spirituality then started, my spiritual path, because I had to find a way to sort
Choice.
of protect myself and to manage what's going on.
Oh,
But other than that, when people have that energy, especially men, I find that men have a lot of those dreams as well. And a lot of people message me about those dreams, and I tell them, what have you been trying to create? What venture have you been trying to do, but you're not doing it? Therefore, the energy stays unutilized, but the idea is still there. Ensure that, number one, you can use that energy to channel into a venture. You can use it for as a spiritual in your spiritual pursuits, because that's how even the concept of priests and nuns operate, right? Or the ascetics, the monks, that's how it operates. Because then, like I said, um, celibacy attracts spirits, isn't it? So you can actually use celibacy intentionally to attract the kind of spirit that you want. Of course, this happens at a level where you're trained. So somebody who's just starting out in spirituality probably will not attract the kind of spirit they want. They'll attract the succubuses and the incubi, isn't it? But if you're trained, you will attract the highest of the high. That's the second. The third one you can do is physical activity, physical pursuits. And I usually tell these people, go to the gym. If you're somebody who's very athletic, you enjoy your basketball, your football, or whatever, you can use that energy. And I think this is why they advise footballers not to engage in sex before games. I've dated a footballer before, by the way, so they were telling me that it's one of those things. So they say that so that they can conserve their energy, because I don't think people understand just how much physical energy goes into sex for both genders. So think of those activities as transmutative activities. If you're not engaging in sex proper, then what else are you going to engage in? It can be physical, it can be mental pursuits also, it can also be spiritual pursuit. And for me, remember I talked about being celibate for some 3 years. And I think that was the time when I really went deep into my spirituality. I went really deep into the intellectual pursuit of knowledge as well. So it really helped me also to focus my energy into that one thing that I was doing. Sexual energy is fire, it's fiery energy. And we say that fire is associated with the above, isn't it? It's associated with spirit, it's associated with intuition. So fire can be controlled. Otherwise, it can turn very destructive. So think of your energy as fire. It can be a very small flame, but then what are you using that flame for? You can use it to cook a gourmet meal, or you can use it to burn down an entire building. So think of yourself as that. Then you become an alchemist, isn't it? And also, while doing that, you have to look at how, because it is fire, it can be, you have to have enough control of it, isn't it? Because this is where now people get burned, right? And some STIs are actually, there's a colloquial term for it, that they've been burned, right? I don't know if that's which one it is, if it's syphilis or which one, gonorrhea, one of those. So it's enough energy, and if it's not positive, it can end up being counterproductive for you and for the next person. So use your fire wisely. Channel your fire to what will abundantly grow. So choose what you want to abundantly grow and channel that fire to that thing. I assure you, you're going to see very, very amazing results.
Yeah. Sometimes back, I did a few coaching lessons with two wealth building coaches,
Mm-hmm.
wealth
Mm-hmm.
builder, and it was such, oh my god, it was an
Mm-hmm.
erotic experience.
Yeah.
That's where I learned to use your sexual energy to build wealth.
Mm. Ah.
First, I didn't understand. I was like, okay, I want to be able to earn this amount of money monthly. Why should we? But man, that was an amazing experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just could
Yeah.
not afford to stay on in there. For other
Mm-hmm.
things, I don't want to go to into right here. But yeah, that's how I learned that sexual energy is creative energy, and you can
Absolutely.
channel it if you want something. Yeah, if you want to build a
Absolutely.
business, for instance. Yeah, or if
Mm-hmm.
you want to target a certain amount. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
one of them will share about how she get the greatest ideas when she, having sex with her partner. Yeah,
Yeah.
right before the really climax, and she had to share that with the partner. And
Mm.
when the partner understood that, now when two of them sync doing sexual
Yeah.
activities to agree
Yes.
on something they want to build. Man, those people are billionaires today. Yeah, but
I,
yeah,
I I agree. Actually, that's the other component of it, which is sex magic, isn't it? Or sexual magic. So that's a whole other concept. And yes, it does work. So you can do it either in your own solo capacity or with a partner. Because now with a partner, then it even enhances the effect of what you're putting out into the ether. So yes, other than the physical, the material, the spiritual, you can actually use it as magic to manifest something that you want to bring over to your experience and your partner. Yeah.
okay. All right. So now let's go to parenting and nurturing. What key
Mhm.
lessons should parents focus on when raising boys to ensure they grow up to be well-rounded men? How
Mhm.
Yeah, how can fathers and other male role models contribute effectively to nurturing? But these fathers and male, as you and I know, most of our conditioning, socialization did not
Mhm.
really give these men the opportunity to have the nurturing ability.
Mhm.
They were
Mhm.
denied that because the patriarchy just robs men
Mhm.
of such benefit. So now we're
Mhm.
trying to raise a new generation. We come back to the drawing board and realize in ancient times our people did this. And even though everything wasn't perfect, but
Yeah.
we had a healthy way of being. Uh,
Mhm.
where men understood like you have your feminine energy in you, but
Mhm. Mhm.
physically you are expressed as a man. But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean because we were created by a force that is all of us, we reflect the force that created all of us, male and feminine
Mhm.
energy. In
Mhm.
Christianity, they say, and God made us men, even though then they will confuse themselves and say, but then the God that made is male. But
Yeah.
yet we are all create reflection of that God. So
Yeah.
in the African and Asian belief, so it's the embodiment of men and male and female energy that is an expression of all of us. So even though I'm a female physically, but I have the male energy as well.
Right.
How can we? So now we come back to that path of understanding as we research and realize, this is how it used to be. What are the
Mm.
key lessons now should parents focus on when raising boys to ensure they become well rounded men?
Mhm. Great question. Great question. I'm a mother to a boy as well, a son as well. So this is
Oh, you
very
have
personal. That's why I saw the question like, this is like asking me a question at noon, I'll be able to answer that. Now, one of the key lessons I learned through parenting, because also parenting as an experience helps you in your own path and your own journey and your
yeah.
own enlightenment, is that number one, we are simply portals through which these children or these new lives come into this world. And I
Mhm.
know a lot of us as mothers, and that's one of the, we'll talk about maybe when we get with the archetypes. Many of us mothers can sometimes treat the child as the property, isn't it? As a doll in the house to be dressed up and to, feed them and whatever it is that the case might be, but not really giving this person the agency as a human being. So you must understand that as a mother, as a father, your job number one is also you're a guardian, essentially. This person has their own feelings, they have their own fate that they are coming to fulfill in this lifetime. Your role is to ensure that you're equipping them or you're supporting them to be able to meet their fate one on one. So, and this is where when the mother and the father fail to meet those requirements that will help that child or propel them towards their fate, we do the opposite thing, which then becomes counterproductive. We traumatize the child, we derail the child, we project our own visions and dreams of what our life could have been onto the child, which is why we say, oh no, you need to be a doctor, a lawyer, this or that, or that, because you wanted probably to be a doctor, a lawyer, and probably were not able to. So the ability to look at your child as a very unique soul and individual, that's number one. Number two is to realize that through you as a parent, mother or father, you are, and through how you're raising this boy, you are, you have a very important opportunity to break a generational curse. Because breaking of a generational curse is simply saying what is ending with you, what is ending with you only, and that's it. You will have broken one or two generational curses. So how were the men raised in your family, or how did they turn out? Then looking at yourself, and you who now has a son, you have another opportunity to either fall in line with the family cycle, the
Mhm.
generational cycle, or to break it at your own personal level. So
Mhm.
for me, I would definitely say number one, raising a boy who is able to survive, to nurture themselves, number one. Because one thing we do is we over nurture our children, or
Okay.
position ourselves as the primary nurturer, so that we don't even give this child an opportunity to
Nurture
in a way, to nurture themselves. So
so
this
okay.
exactly. So they end up being very dependent on the mother. And we've seen these men, the mama's boys, we've seen them. And out of no fault of their own, they've been set up by the mother, or they grow up with very high standards for others. So they want other women. Remember the woman, the inner woman, they want the outside partner to do the same thing that their mother did
Another
for them.
day. Yeah.
Exactly. So when I'm raising my son, I'm always very mindful that I hope whoever this son, by the time he's stepping out of my house, I don't want him to go there looking for somebody who will do the same thing I used to do for him because I was doing everything. I want to give this boy out in the world who is also able to contribute in a household, and not just contribute financially, because girls are also doing that, but to also contribute domestically. So I want a son who's able to, by now he's turning 11 in December, he can make himself a very basic meal, by the way, because again, I have to ask myself, if I'm not here tomorrow, will
Hmm.
this child be able to eat? Will they be able to eat, or will they be crying for mother, because mother is the one who always used to do 1, 2, 3 things? So I
Hmm.
want him to be able to do his chores, his household chores, same way as I do. So what I'm trying to show him is that chores are not gender coded. There's no chores for girls and there's no chores for boys. It's
Mm-mm.
everyone does the chores. And another thing I do is, I guess also just because the nature of who I am is also the fact that I'm really embroiled in intellectual pursuits. So I usually tell him, listen, you have to be able to exist in both worlds. So as a woman, my primary conditioning was to be a domestic goddess, isn't it? But again, we know that women are not just one thing. They can also be, they have individual pursuits, they have individual passions that they want to follow. So I'm demonstrating to him that a woman is more than just one thing. I'm not here in service simply of, are your needs, all your needs met? Okay. Am well, ignoring my own? So I am also showing him that I can definitely nurture you, but I also have my own moments where mom has to pursue her own things as well. You're comfortable as long as you're comfortable, isn't it? So I find that I want him to look for a partner for qualities, not for their service to him. So let him go out there looking for a partner who's spiritually connected, who is emotionally expressive, not necessarily looking for a cooker, cleaner, and what have you. All these chores or things that you can outsource.
Hmm.
Another thing I also find interesting in our cultures is that the mother's brother was the father figure, actually, not necessarily even the woman's husband or the woman's partner, because that person can come and go, isn't it? And we've seen it, the epidemic of fatherless homes, right? So the man they're very flighty. Whenever they're in that flighty mood, it's always good to understand as a woman or as a mother that the male figures in your own family, in fact, were traditionally seen to be the fathers of your child. So don't feel like you're by yourself when you're raising that child. A boy will sometimes want to see the masculinity modeled to him by someone who's not you, because I'm not a man myself. And I understand that, the dynamics, the way the dynamics are, he still has to be able to connect with a father figure, so to speak, which he does have in terms of his own father, but also my own brothers, right? So to nurture those relationships with the male figures in your own
Yeah.
family,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. So again, another thing is to also encourage that. Never, you always have to catch yourselves. Like, boys don't cry, don't try not to do that, try not to do that. Boys do this and girls do this and boys do that. No, in fact, my son has very boyish pursuits. He likes his gaming, and he wants to be a software developer or whatever the case may be. But on the odd side, he also has interesting hobbies where he will crochet. He really finds crocheting very therapeutic and calming. So he'll be walking home from school. And out of his bag, he has his, the thingy, the needle and the the thread. And I find that that's such a all-rounded approach to life. So cater to his creative pursuits. Another thing as parents that we do with boys, because with boys, we always want girls to be the ones pursuing creativity. But boys are the ones who have to pursue things that are seen to be more traditional, male-oriented jobs, physical, that involve physical labor. But boys could also thrive doing what we call creative pursuits. Boys might want to be artists as well. So understand that your job as a parent is to provide that child or equip that child as a soul with what that soul needs to walk its path. And that's, you will have done your duty. Your duty is not to burden that child with your own unrealized goals and aspirations, which is why, as parents, it's so critical that you have interests outside of your children, because your children will grow up and leave, isn't it? What will you be left with? So I want my son to be able to contribute to society in ways that are not just male coded. I want him to add to the woman that he wants to meet, and to be a wonderful father to his own children. And in that way, I will have broken a curse here and there for myself. Yeah, and I think so far so good. The mother, and I think we need to realize that, and maybe we'll discuss that under archetypes, that the mother is nurturing. The mother is an archetype, very nurturing, very warm, you know, provides, yes, gives very comfortable surroundings, domesticity, and what have you. But the dark side of the mother is very devouring, is very stifling, the one that brings everything to herself, the one that takes the life that she has given, right? So we've seen mothers who are so clingy to their sons, literally, right? Some do it figuratively, emotionally, others do it literally. So you want to avoid that trap of being the dark mother, the devouring mother.
Yeah. I'm glad that you went to the dark side. I have yeah,
Mhm,
yeah, I have done a few presentation a few times in years past on mother-in-law, and from the
mm,
biblical perspective, because a new day started, yeah, as a resource for Christians. So I'll
mhm,
be like, so I'll use the scripture and say, for instance, there was a reason why Ruth would leave her family. It was Ruth and Oprah, but then
mm,
she was sent back. Naomi taught her and she left. But there's a reason why Ruth cleaved to Naomi.
yeah,
Uh, her son that Ruth was married to was dead. There was no
mm,
reason for her to stick with her. But the words that some of us use today in our wedding vows,
yeah,
your God will be my God. Where you die is where I will die. I love you. It came from her daughter-in-law to her mother-in-law. Why? Because Naomi must have been really good with her.
yeah,
So she left her people and followed her. And there were
mhm,
two of them. It wasn't even she alone. It's just that the other one said, okay, I will respect you and go back. But the other one
mm,
was stubborn and went with her. Why?
mm,
This woman went to Moab or somewhere, and a Moabite girl followed her according to the Bible because of
yeah,
she treated her. She was still young. She was still among her people. So mother-in-laws, especially in the Nigerian movies, I
patience as
know
a whole.
they have the resources and they're trying to portray our culture, but
Yeah,
sometimes that one story, it's just
mm,
different actors and different characters, but it's just the one perpetuation of this is how Africans, the mother-in-law and fighting the daughter-in-law. That is
yeah,
not for some of us. It wasn't our experience. Me, I didn't experience it.
mm,
My mother. So to
mm,
promoting those kind of things, and then at the same time you say you're Christian. I think it's the
mhm,
dark side of motherhood that you're talking about, because there
yeah,
is a place and a time for a mother in her son's life. Um,
mm,
Sometimes I will share a picture of my son, and one or two times I have seen people who mean
mhm,
well, my even people that I respect, high in society will be like, son, I just sorry because one girl, any girl in the future come and take your son from you will fight her. And I'm
mm.
thinking, I want to comment, but I don't want to make them feel bad. And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
no girl takes a place of a
Of
mother
a mother.
in
Exactly.
her son's life. I'll
Exactly.
always be my son's mother. I
Mm.
cannot be his woman. I cannot
Mm.
be a girl to him. There are
Yeah.
things that a girl can fulfill in his life that I cannot. Why do we
Yes.
mix them up? I think that's the dark side of motherhood.
Of motherhood. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just
Very
one
well said.
mother he has.
Mm.
He will have his lover. There shouldn't be a competition there. We should
Mm.
know where we belong in each other's life. So
Exactly.
I like that you brought up that to do because most of the time it hurts marriages, unions, relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
emotional side can be so damaging. Some of us have had experience like that. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up. Yeah.
Ah, absolutely, absolutely. It's one thing where, as mothers, we need to do our shadow work as well because the drive towards being the primary female figure in your son's life is when you start feeling yourself going towards that direction. It's time to do your own inner shadow work,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always grateful to my own parents anyway because they did not project their things
Me
on
too.
me, and they always supported me much as they sometimes they didn't understand where is all this going, but they trusted the process and they supported me, and that's why I'm here. So that's why I need to. That's now a good cycle, yeah, to replicate with my
Yeah.
own son.
And
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to add on is that while you're the primary nurturer, sometimes too, we have to remember that we have secondary institutions in our lives that condition us. So sometimes I'm teaching my son one thing, like you're teaching your son one thing, but then you belong
Mm.
to a church, for instance, or a mosque, and then they're teaching them something else. Like
Yeah.
I'll come home and have to disabuse my son of things that they
Mm.
taught him at church, you know. He'll be
Mm.
like, yeah, and then they'll have the youth ministry is different, but sometimes we have joint service. So one time we
Yeah.
had this joint service for 5 days, and
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
this guest is preaching about how women should submit and stay in the back, submit your don't outshine your.
Yeah.
My son was sitting next to me too at the church because it was a joint service, so the youth was with us, and he talked all these things, and he gave
Mm.
example about how his wife advised him to make some wrong business decision, so
Yeah.
they lost their money and their home. He could have divorced her,
Wow.
yeah, because it was her fault, and so
Mm.
men should learn not to listen to the. It was just something I didn't agree with. It was just toxic for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was so not happy in our service. We got out. I called the girls together, you know, the young girls, and I tried to tell them, don't listen to the pastor. But then
Mm-hmm.
I caught myself when they were like, and the Priscilla, what's going on? I said, no, it's fine. We can I realized they may go
Uh-huh.
and tell their parents, and the parents would say that I interfering with what the church is teaching them. So I had to come home and
Mm.
tell my son, don't listen to that thing the pastor said today.
Yeah.
Because you got to step back, otherwise you made a man feel intimidated. I had to re-educate my son. Say any
Mm.
girl that makes you feel intimidated, you got to check yourself. So if you want a strong girl, you want a healthy relationship, you want a good
Yeah.
woman that will
Yeah.
make you like you talk about that the both of you will combine and be a strong
Yeah.
team. You better strengthen yourself
Mm-hmm.
now. Now is the time
Absolutely.
you to start building yourself, let's say, so
Yeah.
that tomorrow when you meet that girl, you can be
Mm-hmm.
able to balance each other. So yes,
Exactly.
we teach our sons, but then we got to be mindful. Society is
Mm.
teaching something, so we got to be active and be intentional about how we teach our sons. So
Exactly. So
yeah,
it has to be an ongoing
uncle,
education because for
yeah,
everything we are saying, society might just be saying the opposite. So we just have to consistently keep the messaging very consistent. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, wow. So yeah, we have so much to do. We have so much to do, and on the aspect
Mhm.
of being intellectual as well. From
Mhm.
the time from even from Liberia, I have my
Yeah.
home was filled of boys. For the time my boys was little, we have a time that everybody has to read. We have reading time. So even over
Yeah.
here, 11, my son and I had to incentivize that. If
Mm.
I would tell him, I'll wash your dishes for you if you
Yeah.
can read this book.
If you exactly, I can
So
agree
yeah,
with
when
that.
it came to him getting some money from me, like he was 13, 14, 15, I'll give you
Yeah,
$10 for this volume, and I'll give you $15
yeah.
for this volume. So when
Yeah.
he wants to buy something on Amazon, then he will come. Any new book for me to read because he want me to pay him, and I'll be like, no, you don't reading all the books. When are you going to buy some more new books?
Indeed,
Yes.
indeed.
So
Yeah.
now he working for his own money. He doesn't depend on me to pay him. So now I have to be creative. Sometimes I tell
Uh-huh.
him your day to cook Saturday, I can cook for you if you read so book. Because now I can't task him with money because he's working. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And I remember, I mean, same even for me when my father, every time I'd be top of the class, he would buy me books. And I would cry because I want a doll, I want a bike. It's like, no, if you want dolls, your mom will get them for you. But for me, I'm getting you books. And I always remind him to this day, I'm like, you knew what you were talking about. And in some ways, because we are also told esoterically that sometimes you choose or you bring into your life as a child,
Mhm.
right, your parents, because you come in with the parents that will help you or propel you towards your fate. So sometimes I feel like my parents were those kind of people because they supported me in every way. They
Yeah.
supported me in every way. Yeah, granted, there are those parents who will, they'll do the opposite. Yeah, so there's always those two things going on.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
let's 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 talk about rites of passage. How crucial do you think rites of passage are in developing young men and women? And I know it
Okay.
may be different now because most of us are in the urban area. So, what modern
Yeah.
alternatives to traditional rites of passage? What modern
Sorry, I'm just getting my lights. Sorry.
is
I'm
fine.
just dealing with my lights. Yes. So,
But what modern alternatives to traditional rites of passage do you think would be effective today?
okay. When it comes to, I feel I'm one of those people who see why the ancients had those rights. And when you talk about those rights, I want the audience to look at it from the conceptual perspective because we might not necessarily agree when it comes to the actual right itself. And you've seen there are some rights that honestly really deserve to stay in the past,
Okay,
right?
tell us the importance
So,
of why they did it before and then how
yeah.
what the modern things
Mhm.
you can adapt now.
Right. So when it comes
Those who understand is
to
significant.
indeed for now, there's rights for women, for girls, and there
Yeah.
are rights for boys. And I think when it comes to the one for boys was very, very important because the one for girls is more or less bringing them deeper into the world of the mothers, into the world of their own sexuality, their own spirituality, and their space within nurturing the entire tribe um, through the microcosm of their families, right?
Mm.
But then you have the boys who had to be handed over to the fathers because the belief was from birth to the point of to prepubescent, the child belonged to the mother, isn't it? The child was always hovering around the mother, hovering around, with going without the kitchen or whatever it is that the case might be. So the boy, in a way, ended up being in the world of the mothers. Now, the rite of passage, which was done by the fathers and the elders of the society, of that tribe or that community, was to then bring them out and away from the world of the mothers and into the world of the fathers, right? So doing that then means that there's a demarcation. There was, in the ancient world, there was a very clear demarcation for when was the right time to set down things of boyhood and to take up things of manhood or things of fatherhood. And that was what that entailed was also very clear because then it meant the fathers are there, the elders are there to show them exactly what being a man or being an initiated man meant.
Mm.
And another thing, they did this through, think of the shamanic initiation. It was an initiation, right? Because initiation simply means going from one state of being to another
Yeah,
higher state of being.
my father,
Exactly.
my uncles told us those stories during the initiation of control.
Exactly. Exactly. So it was a very important life cycle and life experience because
Mm.
even as a shaman and a diviner myself, I'm also initiated. So without an initiation, in a way, you have to be mentored, you have to be taught, you have to go through a period of discipleship
Yep.
and then graduate. right? So that's what it entailed. Now, the thing is that you cannot go through initiation without going through a series of hardship or steps that were, challenging, right? Or certain,
And it was done with a
challenges.
group of boys, right? Because
Yes.
every group had a class. Like
Yeah.
my father had his PS, and then
Mm-hmm.
my brother, my uncle had his PS.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are others who there are some there now this is where you get the differentiations, or you get the similarities, because it was for each community to decide what level of hardship the initiation would entail. There are some who would say, in my community, we would remove 6 teeth from the lower jaw. These first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 would be knocked out, right? And that would then be a signal, a physical signal that you've gone through the process. There are others who would go through circumcision for men. Others will do the FGM, right? Others will go through some kind of circumcision, or some kind of
Back on a back. I think that's what the Poro do in Liberia. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. So my point has always been that we can take issue with the process of signaling initiation, because there are some that are contentious, of course, like FGM.
Yeah.
And then there are, but let's not forget where that concept came from. We can create others. We can create new ways to signal, or to initiate, or to graduate our children,
Mhm.
our sons, into men. But you see, you cannot then have initiation ceremonies in a fatherless society, right? So if we have a crisis of fathers, or a crisis of masculinity, then to what extent are you going to, be to succeed in bringing boys into the world of men? Because now what happens is, in the absence of these rights, boys now become, in their 30s, who we call the eternal youths, puer aeternas, the ones who in fact look at men who are doing their role with disdain. Like, why are these men being so boring? Why can't they just enjoy their life? So their
They have
thinking is
to.
that of, yes, their
They
thinking is
don't know they miss
adolescent.
why. Yeah, they don't know they miss the real training to be a real man.
Exactly. So what I would usually say is, these days there are these kinds of retreats, or gatherings, where we call them the fathers of the society, where they come together and they bring boys around. There are some who actually have taken it on as an initiative, and that's really commendable. And
Mm.
there are those who also do it for girls. But if we can do it at a large scale, where we work with age sets, I know there are certain communities that have the age set, say
Yeah,
13 to 15,
yeah. That's
etc.
why I said
Exactly,
father said they had a group of boys
exactly.
at the same
Yes,
age.
yes,
So they
yes.
have a way
And
to
and
to them.
yes, and to understand that that process will entail some kind of difficulty, or some kind of challenge you have to then overcome, in a way to signal that you are no longer a child.
A
You are
child.
now, yes, you're no longer a child, because that's the point of adulthood. We are living in a society where there's really no set age to where we became adults.
Just
At
on
what point?
ourselves. Yeah.
Yes, and now we are in a society that is striving very hard to hold on to youth at all costs. Right? We've seen the proliferation of cosmetic surgery, or whatever the case might be,
I think it's the
to
influence
hold
of
on.
Western way of being.
Yes, yes, because
So,
there's a place for everyone.
because beauty is money in capitalism. So I
Yeah.
think it's also that influence.
Yes, yes. So we need to get the thing with initiation, and how society was structured, is that there was a space for everyone at every age. So it meant that the young had their own things going on. Then we had the age sets, the young men who were initiated, probably they would go into either the warrior age set, whatever the case might be. Then
Mm.
you have the maturer guys, and the women, right? So women who are now mothers, and have grown older to some extent, enter the elder society, where now they are even able to guide the others. They are able to guide or act as wise women, right?
Mm.
So now when you look at society, if a society, we live in a society where everyone is chasing youth, then where are the elders, right? Who will guide society? Who's going to say, okay, I'm the voice of the crone, or I'm the voice of the wise man, where everyone is stuck in their 30s or their 20s, at least mentally, right? So those are things that we need to think about, how to support our youth to be able to equip them for the world they're entering, because the world they're entering is a world of difficulty, which is, I believe, why initiation they had to endure difficulty. And another thing is also for boys and girls, initiation was more of a development of the spirit, to develop a kind of spirit where now I can be self-sufficient and independent. That's why they used to be taken away from their homes, isn't it? They go to the forests or
Yeah,
somewhere else.
somewhere
Yeah,
away from the town.
exactly. So these ordeals were not, it's usually called necessary wounding. It's not because for you to be separated from the mother, or as an esoteric concept,
Remove from the breast.
yes, you have to
Physically.
cut the umbilical cord. It's a wounding. Even the cutting of the umbilical is a wounding, but it's a necessary one, isn't it?
Yeah, for
Yes.
good.
So initiation was also entailed a necessary second cutoff from
Yeah.
the mother, from the world of the mother, not just the mother, now to join your peers and now be able to operate as a productive member of that society.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Thank you. So now, yeah, there are different groups. People are doing it in different forms. Now
Mm,
it has taken the more gender sensitivity form because
mm,
um yeah, because now society is upside down.
yeah.
So toxic masculinity is the
Mm,
culture. So most of
mm,
these groups are popping up as with different names, men for women, for instance,
yeah.
boys for girls, or
Uh-huh.
masculinity as yeah, healthy masculinity. So
Mm,
there are some groups of mentoring for boys from maybe 12 to 16. There are a lot of them on
mm,
that I see.
yeah.
So I think mentoring is one of the modern ways that they're doing this rite of passage now.
Yeah, mentoring and counseling as well. Counseling can also be through that period. Remember when was talking about girls' boarding schools where the issue with mastering sexual energy?
Hmm.
Yes, I think also counseling, especially for that age set, the ones that are just entering high school, would also count, especially when it's done intentionally as an initiation.
Yeah.
That would also count, because we also have to take some of these practices with us into the modern age, isn't it? And they have to make sense for the modern age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think programs like this can serve also as eye opening to help people understand it's not a bad thing to not be a youth.
Yeah.
Uh, because most people start from they just run with what is trending now in the mainstream, and they
Yeah.
don't understand that in the past our history teach us or our people practice was like this, that uh,
Yeah.
it was an honorable thing to be a mother or to go through the rite of passage as a woman, maybe not a
Yeah.
mother but as a woman or as a
Yeah.
man. So everybody does not have to like be like girl. But
Mm,
again, where I would think some of that comes from the Western way of being, and
mm,
and that is so entrenched in Christianity as well, because Christianity
yeah.
will push the preference of virgin, unlike African spirituality where a
Um,
woman didn't, virgin had her place, but women
yeah.
had their place, as
Yes.
others, they were pillars. So uh, everybody does not have to be a virgin or be young.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember this gone birthday of mine, and then people, a co-worker or people are doing like, oh no, it's not good to. I'm saying my age. No, it's not good to ask someone
Yeah.
your age, and you can say you 40 or you 35. I say no, I'm 48. Where I come
Yeah.
from,
What's the issue?
where I come from, and we don't have our age, or maybe I was in isolation, but what I remember
Mm,
all around me, it's a great
mm,
thing to be a big girl. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be referred to as Sister Priscilla, Auntie Priscilla. I say I don't have a problem with declaring my age. I'm 48. I'm not
Yeah.
some girl. Seniority is a cool thing where
Mm.
it comes from.
It's a
It's here
blessing.
that
Yeah.
everybody wants to be a girl
Yeah.
because American capitalism feature beauty in youthfulness. Yeah,
It's currency. It's currency.
yeah, that's the
Youthfulness and
currency.
beauty is currency.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta be beautiful and young with flat tummy and skin. I don't have time for that.
Exactly.
I'm a
Exactly.
woman. I'm
And
48. And I'm not happy
yeah.
with age. I've been putting it up since I could remember, from 37 or 38 from
Yeah.
Facebook. Every year I put it up.
Yeah.
Now I'm 48.
Yeah, it's a blessing to grow older. It is, and to have the marks of wisdom, and that's what I usually say. I can't wait for. That's why I'm doing my grey transition for my hair because even in the sphere of what I'm in fact, this is it's even more a mark of respectability and wisdom, the
Yeah.
external marker. So I don't need to speak
To
much.
be
You just look
hiding
at.
it, yeah. I show my co-workers sometimes when I'm at work and a Liberian lady is celebrating her birthday. So you see, well,
Yeah.
some people can probably declare their age. That year come before a
Mm.
year. Oh, yeah. People worry when at their birthday. I don't like to say my birthday. I hate to celebrate
Yeah.
my birthday.
Yeah.
Why it
That's
means
in the
that
old
I'm
world.
old. I'm aging. So what is this?
I'm
But
forever
yeah, but I
29.
understand that culture here is different. People age
Yeah,
out of even workplaces because then you
yeah,
retire or they start
hmm,
discriminating against you. Ageism is
yeah,
a thing in this part of the world.
mm,
So people
hmm,
worry about all of those things. You lose your relevance, and all of that. So
yeah.
anyway,
I understand totally. But it's I think that would then mean it fits you into a box of what we call the hetera, the eternal youth. So it puts you into that box. Once you're in that box, then you have to act accordingly. You can't tell people your real age.
yeah,
You can't act like you're not comfortable with how old you're turning. So if you break out of that box, suddenly you have a lot of power, and you realize that, oh my, especially for women, you realize in fact why society wants to box us into this eternal youth box, because once you become a wise woman who we call a crone, oh my goodness, that's where your power amplifies
mm,
manifold. And
mhm.
then that's where women who are wise, they're the ones who transform society because they are not afraid to speak their minds. And
No,
probably, yes, they are not. And they're the ones who we need. These are the people we need now more than ever. And I think they are rising. We are rising. I mean, we are right here. We are rising and we are speaking up, right? And we are
yeah,
making change where we have been planted.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's come to archetypes in relationship. I want to make it personal, but don't mind me if
Mm,
you don't feel comfortable. I wanted to
it's
ask you,
fine.
which relationship architect do you most identify with, and how has it
Ah,
influenced your relationships? Or
okay.
don't want to go on yourself? How can understanding our architect help individuals navigate their relationship more effectively?
Great question. And I thought about that as well when I was looking at it. And I would say I would put myself, let me count, let me first enumerate them and then I'll say where I sit. So there's the four of them, isn't it? I have them written down in my notes. So when you see me glancing down, not to worry at all.
Okay.
Yes, so we have mother, right? I'll say the feminine and the masculine. So these are one, two, three, four archetypes, main archetypes, of course. There are many, but these are like the four main ones: mother,
Mm,
and father, right? Then you have the hetera. That's what they call them, hetera, who is
okay.
the eternal youth, but as a woman. And then now you have the eternal youth as a man, who is known as the puer aeternus. Right? Then you have the Amazon,
Yeah,
or the warrior.
the
Yeah, the
warrior.
warrior and the hero, exactly. So the Amazon as a woman, and as a man, that's the warrior or the hero. Then you have the medium, or the seer, or the
Mhm.
seeress, wise
The
woman, and
wise
then you have,
woman. Mhm.
yes, then you have the wise man. So I'm probably on the CRS side. I'm on the CRS, and I'm also on the Amazon. Because you can't just be one thing, isn't it? So I'm Sia, oscillating between Sia and the Amazon woman, and I'll explain what those mean. I think we've discussed the mother archetype quite comprehensively in this sitting. But then again, it has both sides to it. So remember the nurturer, the one who creates a very comfortable domestic environment for people to thrive and meet their goals. The one who is invested in meeting the needs of those who fall under her under her responsibility. But then now we have the what do you call, it is called the opposite, the dark side, which is the devourer, the stifler, the mother-in-law, the toxic mother-in-law personality, that one who won't let go of her child or won't let her child grow up and go out into the world.
For a healthy
Actually,
relationship, yeah.
yes. So the one that always wants to keep that person inside there, whatever, to protect them from the world. Then you have the father, right? So the father is the one who creates, he's very much associated with structure, he's associated with continuity, with the law, the one who creates a very orderly household. They can be depended on for protection as well in case it gets to that point. They are a very steadfast and inspiring figure. But then the opposite side of it is that if you're a woman who is very much in remember the inner lover, if your inner animus figure is associated with father, then you have to be very careful, because yes, you might get the good sides, the one who wants someone to take care of them and to dictate and directs their every move. But again, the dark side of it is that the dark father figure keeps you in a state of perpetual girlhood, because then it means you can't, they're always telling you what to do, what to think, what to pursue. You can't have your own independent things going on. And I think this is where society needs to think about it, because, and I know you've also had the gender wars online, or whatever the case might be, where women are looking for providers who are essentially father figures, protectors and
Provide for
providers.
me, protect me. Protect you from what?
Exactly.
Provide for you what?
And then the men are looking for mother figures. I want a cleaner, and then do whatever, and a cook, and whatever the case
They're
might
supposed
be.
to provide for each other and protect each other. For me, I'm talking about partnership, but yeah, we are
Exactly. So
different. People want to be taken care of and protected.
yes. So I think and another argument I was making is that protection and provision are not necessarily unique to
Male
masculinity.
specific,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's also very much a feminine trait. The only
But
thing that men can
exactly.
protect
But
us.
that's what I'm going to
Yes.
say. But in the first
Yeah.
place, who is the first protector? Is the
It's the
mother.
mother. It
Is
is the mother. In fact,
the
the mother is
female who
fiercely.
carry a full human being in her for 9 months, protecting that and giving that birth, that life,
Yeah.
and protecting it throughout. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
So
love
it's more of it's
watching.
how it's the gender expression of it that will change, but protection and provision are not unique to masculinity. It also exists, if not more, in
It was
femininity.
white men trying to control all of us that taught us that.
Exactly. And I usually say if men need to protect us from something, probably from other men, say, because the man is a bit stronger physically. If your man is attacking you and he's bigger and burlier than you, then of course another man would be the best person to protect you from that. So
And
yes, there are nuances.
I've
Yes.
shared that before numerous
Yeah.
times. Like, if you're arguing that you need to protect a woman, who are you protecting her from? From another
Exactly.
being who is being a prey. So if you will just not attack women and we can all live in
Yeah.
harmony, that would need no. I have to be a protector.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see, it is really
Men
tied in. And
protecting
then
me from other men.
yeah, exactly. So we need to realize that even if as a woman you're looking for a protector, provider, a father figure, you have to realize that sometimes this father figure, the dark side, can be very controlling. The dark side can be will keep you
Dominating.
as a child. Yeah, dominating. They'll keep you in your child era, right? Which
Yeah.
is probably why many of these conversations are obsessed with the age of the woman, right? They have to be as young, past 30. They are it's a wrap. But you see, it is all associated with how malleable you are. Anyway, that's the mother father. Now we have the eternal youths, the Hetira and the Puer on this side. So the eternal youth as a woman is now these ones that we talk about, the ones who, even as they grow older, the ones who still want to keep on or make the appearance of youth. And they don't even have to be older anyway. They can still be in their 20s. So, but the thing that distinguishes this particular kind of a lady or a man is the fact that they're hard to pin down. They're flighty. They're about the good things of life. They're here for a good time, not a long time. They're probably very attractive or enjoy having the aesthetics of beauty, or desirability, which is probably why they're hard to pin down, right? So, and we've seen this in Kenya here, we call them the slay queen aesthetic, the ones who look good, the long nails, makeup done, always, the hair is done, they always look good. Now, these are the kind of women who might attract a partner who wants to pin them down because of their beauty. Of course, I mean, they look good.
That's his
But you
object of possession.
Exactly, that's your
Correct.
trophy. But you see, it's so difficult to tie or put these people into a box because the next best thing is going to come in, isn't it? A new man is going to come in who's able to keep her
Give
better
more.
or
Yeah.
provide something that they like or whatever the case might be. So same with the men. These are who I call the bad boys, the ones who want to eternally just have a great time, but they don't have a place to nest. These are the ones who probably are the ones who are looking at the father figure as, like I said, they're the ones who call them squares. They call them boring because they're not living their best life. Why can't they just, go from woman to woman and just be afraid of commitment in general? So these are the ones who are in need of the initiation phase as well,
Yeah.
right? Then
Escape
we
our
have,
face down.
yeah, exactly.
They escape the rite of passage.
Exactly, they're scared of the rite of passage. So, as no matter how old they grow, they're always going to be
So
in that energy. Yeah, and again,
are they
people
drawn
don't
to?
realize. Yeah, so if you're the kind of man who your inner lover, or in the anima is this courtesan, is this Hetira figure, eternal youth figure, you realize that they are very fickle. The dark side is that they can be very fickle. They are with you for a short period until you bore them or the next somebody else comes in. So don't really expect commitment from these guys. And same for women. As a woman, if you're dealing with the bad boys, don't expect to be the one who makes them settle down. They're going to go on to the next thing as well. So you always have to be cognizant of those of the light and the dark side. Then you have the Amazon, or the warrior. The Amazon is now the warrior who's a woman. Yeah, the one. Think of them as the office, the one who cracks the ceiling, the glass ceiling. In corporate realms, those are now the modern day Amazon, right? The women who are generally leading the charge. They are very much in control of themselves and their lives. They are organized. In fact, they are very much associated with earthiness. So they have mastered the material realm. They are rich. They are very financially stable. They're the ones who are going on these luxury vacations. They're the ones who have their credit is perfect score. Everything is okay with them. Um, but also the dark side of this Amazon is that they can be very much identified with the patriarchy sometimes because they are all about the law. They always want things to work
Just like
according
this.
to the law.
Yeah, to keep it.
Exactly.
We call them
Exactly. So
patriarchy patties.
yes, in fact, I call them, they
They
are
eat it
very
all
much the daughters of their fathers, the daughters of the father. Exactly. So they will side with the patriarchy. They're the ones who, even when they get to the top of the ceiling, it's not necessarily
up.
to
Just
help other women.
no.
Yes, yes. So that's the dark side. There are those who choose to do better, of course. But if the Amazon is your type, archetype, you have to be mindful. You don't be the person who, when a woman is attacked, you ask them, "What were you wearing?" An Amazon will ask you that question, by the way. And
But
you'll be
what
like,
you
"What
said to
did you
him,
do?"
he beat her. But what you did to him,
Yeah, what did you tell him? What did you do? What did So the Amazon is because they don't look at themselves, say, as women per se within an oppressive system. They simply look
no.
at themselves as individuals who made it to the top of that system.
Yeah,
So now the system is working for them as well.
yeah.
All right. So the male equivalent of the Amazon is the hero figure, right? So the hero is your CEO, your executive type, right? He's very controlling. Yes, they have resources. So the CEO might be do very well with the eternal youth lady, because they have resources, they're successful, they're the top of their game, top of the ladder. But the flip side is very controlling, very domineering, might not be emotionally expressive or emotionally connected. So they are more like the dark father as well. Then we have the medium or the seer, CRS, wise woman, wise man. So from a seer perspective, by the way, from a seer perspective, this is the woman who's very connected to the cosmos. Now that's why I said I associate myself with seer, but also with Amazon in the sense that they get things done. The Amazon, actually, I wanted to say the woman Amazon attracts the eternal youth, the men. So that's why you will see a woman who's very, very successful in her area, but she's dating somebody who's probably very much younger, probably in a creative field or pursuit. They're not doing as well as she is career-wise. So, and there's a reason for that, because the eternal youth don't really take that much responsibility for themselves per se. So they look for partners who have their things lined up. Yes. So those would be the Amazons and the warriors. Yeah. So they definitely attract the youths. Now back to the wise woman and the seer. These are the spiritual women. These are the ones who are full. They're always connected. They know the future. They're the muse. They can be very intriguing in terms of that, right? Their novelty. And if you're a man who has that as an archetype in terms of the inner lover, then you tend to gravitate towards women who have some kind of spiritual connection, because they're going to inspire you. They're going to be your muse in a way where they drive you towards your fate and your destiny. Same for them, same for the men, because then they think of the man, the wise man, as the prophet, the one who knows where society is going, the one who people consult when things of import are under discussion, right? But then the dark side of the wise woman or the CRS is that it's mixed in with this madness there, right? Because if you're somebody who's always connected to the collective, you can connect to the collective in a way where it possesses you entirely. And we've seen people like this, the ones who become cult leaders, that the ones who yes. So even as a wise woman CRS myself, I always have to be mindful that I am not getting overtaken by these forces that I am saying I'm a mouthpiece for. I always have to balance, right? So, and not really center myself as the source of this knowledge or this information. I am simply an emissary. I am a messenger.
Okay. So, now you do not
yes,
become a court leader.
yes. Don't become a cult leader.
Daddy, mommy. Yes. Daddy will pray for me before things happen. Mommy will,
yes. And then the thing, the danger with the dark side of the CRS or the seer is that they are so convinced of the fact that they are so right, that if they are wrong, they will lead you down a very dark path and a destructive path. And we've seen it as well, right? Especially if now they're cult leaders, they are influential. Then you end up with people who, and you see this thing happening, the nationalist wave that's going on in the West.
Donald Trump is?
Yes, I think he is a mouthpiece. He's a mouthpiece for a very strong and dark collective idea. Definitely. Because the thing is and in some way, when you look at it like that, it humanizes people, even like Trump. Because I look at him, I've studied him as well since 2016 and then 2020 again. Because in 2020, if you notice, many spiritual leaders were falling down the rabbit hole into that pipeline of Trump. And they were looking at him as like the second returning of Christ. It was a big deal. I had to, separate myself from spiritual groups and spiritual communities around that time, 2020, because I could see it's being possessed or taken over by this collective idea. So I see Trump, even sympathetically, as every collective movement needs a mouthpiece. So if you are step up as the mouthpiece, then you become the person that people gravitate towards. So in that way, yes. And we've seen also other figures in Europe, and you can see the riots happening in the UK. You can see what's going on in Germany. So there's just a lot of that happening. And if, especially if there's a charismatic figure at the mid in the center of it, yes, that's the dark seer. That's a
Yeah.
dark seer. Yeah, so we always have to be mindful. So for me, I see myself as a seer, as somebody who can speak life, who can give guidance, but of course it has to be ethical, and I have to always be mindful that, am I sure that I have to make sure I am not existing in an echo chamber. And this is why many prophets and seers exist on the peripheries of society, because if you're in the middle of it, you lose your objectivity. You'll be wrong. You will miss things. You'll make mistakes. So in a way, you have to look at events from a bit of an elevated perspective, right? So we always have to be very mindful. So there's Sia and then Amazon in terms of that. So if there's a man who has that archetype as his internal image of his ideal lover, then that's perfect. We get along very well for sure. So it's always good to know where you fall and what kind of people you tend to attract. Actually, when you see the kind of people you tend to attract, you will know where you fall. If you attract eternal youth,
Yeah.
you're probably someone who's, yeah, yeah.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
I know childhood experiences can influence the partners individuals attract in their relationship engagement, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
N- Well, you
Oh,
know,
how childhood.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead. No, no, no. I was saying, yeah. I was just responding to what you said, and I said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe childhood experience plays into that as well because it also influences the
Mm.
partners that you attract in your
Yes.
your relationship engagement.
Absolutely. And we've talked about how the mother can create an eternal youth out of their son if
Oh,
they're constantly not allowing or disempowering that child. So they're keeping them in a state of eternal boyhood. As a mother, you can decide to empower your son or to keep him in that state. But you see, it always comes back to haunt you because you'll always be the mother to this person. And again, motherhood in a way is a soul contract. And I feel motherhood is past a certain age, it now becomes spiritual, like a spiritual role, right? When the child is younger, you're taking care of them in every other way, the physical and what have you. But past a certain age, as a mother, your role should be very much emotional, very much spiritual, right? And even if need be, mental in terms of giving advice and guidance. But then that's it. And even as fathers, between fathers and and daughters, you can create a princess, mentality in your daughter, and unbeknownst to you. But maybe back then they didn't know in the 50s, but now because of information, they know that, I'm spoiling you, but remember, I'm your father, right? But don't imagine that when you go out there, just be able to be mindful and not become the eternal youth to expect a father from every man that you meet, right? And to also pursue your own independent passions, because that's where your abundance will come from. I think that's how we were raised, even as girls.
yeah, and
But
some of us still do that. Even us who say we are educated. I remember when I was in Liberia some years back,
mm,
talking to this
mm,
man, and whose son had a girlfriend, and she wanted to see whether, and she should be able to prepare, and because she used to do rice bread, she'll make cake and stuff.
mm,
She should be able
mm,
to do this and do that for my son. I got to test
mm.
her before, and she and my son moving together. So I said, did did your son father, did his father mother do that to you? And
Honestly.
then she was quiet. Some of them, yes, it will be the experience. I heard people who are asked the same question and say, yeah, they did that to me. So should you perpetuate that? Did you like that when it was done to you?
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember a partner who tried to do that in the past, and
Mm,
oh, my mother can do it like this, and my mother, and she'll be coming and say, I'm not your mother. So
exactly.
so he honors well just started being friendly. So I think he called himself and
Yeah.
said, okay, this is not going to work over here. So this
Yeah.
is not your mother's home, boy. We're going to
Hmm.
build our home together, otherwise
Yeah.
move back to mama. And
Mm,
tell my son the same thing. So I have
Yeah.
a problem. Yeah, me too. It bothers me when people do that. Uh,
Mm,
um, Sometimes, again, like I was talking about, no matter how educated we are, I see people who are supposed to be educated. You see them
mm-hmm.
posting things like, Shimon, the girl who coming for my son, Shimon really tie her waist to meet me, and I be like, oh my God, really? Yeah, we
It's
need to
crazy.
really, really work on making our relationship healthy, understanding that the world goes round and round. Yesterday you were daughter, and now today you be
Mm,
a wife.
you're a mother.
You
Yeah, wife
produce,
then mother.
and then you become a mother. You produce a child
Mm,
who's going to be a spouse to someone else. How
yeah,
are we? We keep feeding into the kind of toxic cycle of relationship. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good to catch those cycles. It's good to catch them and flip them.
Yeah, yeah, and make a difference and be a change. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And talking about Amazon enforcing things, sometimes it can come out in a way that we don't know. We find ourselves in those situations.
Mm,
There were places that I worked. I'm not going to name, but there were issues where I raised issue, for instance, that hey, we need to factor in our budget pads, sanitary
mm,
pads in the bathrooms.
mm,
And you raise it with your immediate, someone above you, and then it'd be like, no, that's a personal responsibility. And this
mm,
person is a female, so talking about how sometimes even women up there don't realize that they are women.
mm,
And
mm,
then you
mm.
say, yeah, I said this year should be factored into our budget because you have women staff, and then you say no, those are women individual thing. They should be able to buy their own pass. No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
nature, yeah, but they should be able to take care of their own nature. And I'm like, so we provide toilet paper in the bathrooms, isn't that nature? Or we provide
yeah.
it because men can poo as well, right? No, yeah, the policies we make, as long as it doesn't affect me, we say it's the
Yeah.
woman's responsibility. Look around the world. See,
Mm,
countries are catching up to that. They're changing those
yeah.
kind of policies. And it's
Mm,
happening in public spaces. Women
yeah.
pay tax. So if toilet paper is some of the things that are produced in those
Yeah.
places, sanitary pads should be produced as well. Because it's nature and being asked to be menstruating every month. But that had to be
Mm,
a fight back and forth. And then I took it to somebody above that person. And that was the same feedback until I took it to HR. And
yeah.
and I know I got some frowns, and I mean, well, at the end of the day, now the
Yeah.
policy has changed, so
Yeah.
have, we have that. So yeah, sometimes you think that because women are up there, so they will understand. But it
Yeah.
took an HR male to see my point, and so
Mm, mm,
now we have that. Uh,
yeah.
so that's why just putting woman in leadership is something I don't share as well. It has to be a
Mm,
woman who understands from
yeah.
female from a gender perspective, who is
Mm,
aware when it comes to gender, and
right.
doesn't think like a man.
Yeah,
Thinking
exactly.
like a man is not a bad thing, but our society has
Mm-hmm.
conditioned men to have the persuasive
Mm,
skill, so they don't
yeah.
yeah, they are not used to having perspective from everybody else because for
Mm,
centuries now it's just been men in a room, so they only
mm,
listen to themselves. It's now
yeah.
that spaces are open and women are coming in those spaces.
Mm,
Yeah,
precisely.
well, I
Good
think it
point.
was a great
Mhm.
conversation. If there is something
Yeah.
I didn't ask that you want to share before we
Mm-hmm.
wrap up, please go ahead and
Okay. Let me see. Let
share
me.
with us.
I
What?
had made. Oh, yeah. I had made one thing I wanted to also indicate in terms of. Remember the very first question about how multifaceted we are, and you talked about also the how the West has factored in as a factor into how we think. We as Africans thinking as the West,
Yeah.
or even in terms of our gender relations, thinking with the lens of the West.
Yeah.
But we also have to realize, I had wanted to talk about the concept of the brains, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And according to many esotericists, they're saying as it is, the West is really a great exemplar of the left hemisphere, right? Whereas there's a deficit of the right hemisphere. And what I mean is that the left hemisphere is what technology. It is the half of the brain that speaks, and a lot of brain surgeons know this because they understand how these things work, especially when dealing with an injury. So they say when you have an injury to the left hemisphere, the first facility to go will be that of speech. So the left hemisphere becomes more of like the conduit, the one that speaks, whereas the right hemisphere is very silent. And because the right hemisphere is silent, the left hemisphere imagines that actually, no, I'm the only one that exists. Whereas the right hemisphere is the hemisphere of your brain that maintains vigilance to things that are outside your immediate scope. Let's say if you're in the wild, they say that especially they've observed how birds and animals operate. So they'll always maintain one particular eye. The left eye will always be on the lookout. What's happening around me, just in case. Is there any danger? So the right hemisphere is associated with things of spirituality, things that are very esoteric, things that are metaphysical, but they tend to be downplayed because the right hemisphere does not speak. It is a silent guest in the house, and for that reason, the right hemisphere is referred to as the master, whereas the left hemisphere, because it is the speaker, is the messenger of the right hemisphere. So things that are of the spirit, things that are metaphysical. In Africa, we have an abundance of right hemisphere, isn't it? Right hemisphere thinking, which is why the West can only attack us with this quote unquote science, rationality, intellect, things like that,
Mm.
right? Whereas they don't understand how both of these things come into play. Whereas in Africa, we were able to merge both things. We never forgot what the right hemisphere is about. We never forgot our ancestors, because that is also associated with the right hemisphere.
Mm.
So to always ensure, even in our spiritual walk, that we are merging both sides. You can't just be on the intellect side and you forget about the intuition. You have to merge intuition with your intellect. And that is what bred high priests, and that is what bred high priestesses. That is what bred our powerful libraries in West Africa along the Nile Valley, many of them which were burned, yeah, but they existed. So I believe this is an opportunity for us to have a new dawn where now we understand fully the space and the position that we occupy. So let's start doing that preparation, even in your own spiritual walk. Yes, you're on the spiritual side, but
Mm.
don't forget to feed the left hemisphere much as you're feeding the right? So that
Yeah.
we don't have those deficits, because they always show in society, as you can see happening in the West.
Wow. Wow,
Mhm.
that's deep. Wow, 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 that's deep. Thank you so much. Uh,
Welcome.
we always learn something. I think it's Dennis on. He's one of your big fans. So I want to give shout
Hi,
out to
Dennis.
Dennis. I think it's he on that keep highlighting. he keep
Oh,
he keep calling people to come on to listen to you.
hi,
So,
Dennis. I really appreciate all your supports. I completely appreciate. You're my tribe. You guys are my tribe for sure.
no, yeah. Thank you, Mildred, for coming again, and thank you, Dennis, for this beautiful platform that afford us to be able to engage like this and talk about these kind of
Yeah.
things. So,
Yeah.
Mildred, to you and what you continue to do, we really, really wish you well and say this is your home whenever
Mhm.
something new come out that we need to be
Yeah,
aware of.
for sure.
We are open to that knowledge. Please
For
come.
sure. Next month I'll be on your case. Definitely I'll have a new topic to bring to your audience. So I'll
Okay.
definitely be reaching out.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Good. That's good to know. Woo, woo, woo. You see? Yeah, man. So, is it possible to do a reading for Dennis? He's not here, but I want to hear his secret.
Yeah,
No,
for
I'm just
sure.
joking.
I'll do a reading
I
for
don't know
him.
whether you will want that. I'm
You
just
can share my contact with him, and I'll
okay.
be very happy to take him through at his
Okay.
own pace, at his own time.
Thank
It's
you.
the least I can do to say thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, and thank you to Kenya. Thank you, Nairobi, for staying up and being with
Yeah,
us at this time. I bet it's 10 p.m. now, right? At your end.
yeah, it's 10.
Okay, so we're
It's
gonna
10
let you
p.m.
go. We're gonna let you
No
go and say
problem.
goodbye. Uh,
Thank you so much for having me. Until
yeah.
next time.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Goodbye.
bye.
Okay. Yeah, so people, that's it. That's it. Thank you for joining us today at a new day. We believe that change begins with a conversation. This is an open mind challenge movement. We invite you to join us. Let's keep talking, raising our voices, and working together to make social justice a reality. Join us next time on a noonday conversation as we continue to push for the changes that matter. Let's make progress every day. I look forward to our next episode. Let us stay strong and let dignity lead the way. Remember, this is specifically to Liberians. Remember Liberian scholar Robtel Pele's voice. Let dignity define us. It's a new day, everyone. It's a new day. Let's keep talking. Goodbye.
Mm.
Goodbye, Mildred.
Goodbye. We'll catch
We
up.
are Labiran. Labira is our home. Labiran people. Ilẹ̀ Yorùbá everyone. Labiran o. Ilẹ̀ Yorùbá everyone. Labiran mi Labiran.